Okay, so as a company, Wrights and Sites are probably best known for creating their series of Miss Guides, starting with their Miss Guide to Exeter and then following on with various other located Miss Guides and then a Miss Guide to Anywhere. Miss Guides have a theoretical base in the mythogeography movement. It's this idea that they are trying to find practical strategies for helping either theatre makers or anybody just living day to day to try and reimagine the cities that they live and work or what Tim Ingold would say, dwell in. Okay, so the misguides themselves, the actual documents, implicitly have implicitly contain the company's prevailing orthodoxies and make them available, transferable and active in a practical sense. Yeah, so it's the practical embodiment of the mythogeography movement. Yeah, the misguides embody this sort of desire to change and to do these things and give us practical guidance on how to do that. So misguides themselves are a series of tasks which are presented to a participant which enable them to explore a site through mythogeography. A Miss Guide to Anywhere was made in 2004 which aimed to act as a generic set of ideas that could be transferred to any street, town, city or village anywhere in the world. The guide hopes to take advantage of various elements which could normally seem like an inconvenience and transform them into a new way of looking at places. So this is a quote from the Miss Guide to Anywhere. Most cities are in a constant state of change. This is clearly marked by roadworks as underground services are updated or installed. Such work is generally regarded as an inconvenience. On a misguided walk, it can be seen in a different light. So on a misguided walk, these inconveniences could be seen in a different light. A hole in the city provides a chance to peer into the historical and geological layers of the place. In this way, you can consider the roadworks as a free open-air exhibition of earthworks and archaeological revelations. It's about shifting our perspective. It's about, from that quote, it's just touching just ever so slightly on what we're trying to do within a mythogeographical sort of movement, what you're trying to do if you're on a drift or if you're walking through the town. It's to try and perceive your immediate environment in a different way, because so often we end up going on autopilot. We walk the same routes every single day, we travel the same paths, and what ends up happening over time is you almost blank out the details. You're so much in your head, you've got your inner monologue talking to you about the various tasks you have going on, and that just sort of grounds out any of the actual detail around you, and you start to forget that you're actually in an environment and there's a lot that you can perceive or that you can take from that. And if you actually just slightly change your perspective, you might actually get a lot out of it. So the exercises are quite varied. It might be that they ask you to consider the people of a particular place as zombies, and you have to go and assimilate with those zombies or view them. How does that change how you understand that location? They invite you to go travelling with children because they're not necessarily as influenced by the social constructs that sort of guide our everyday practice, and they're far more open to kind of imaginative responses to things. In their Miss Guide to Anywhere, they suggest that you go exploring with children and let them choose a special way of travelling through the space. They say, as if the city were underwater, as if the city were a mountain, as if the city were. So take a normal route that you would walk and reimagine it in a different sort of light. Imagine you're travelling across the moon. Like and reflect on what does that do to how you perceive it? Misguides help us view places where we, you know, view. It's not necessarily just about sort of a kind of your current location. It's not necessarily just used for where you live, but it's more just how you apply yourself within your environment and how you might change your immediate environment. These guides to anywhere can be done by anyone with any amount of people. As theatre makers, the misguides really help us to really look at those specificities of the site, because it's probably walking through a space and imagining you're underwater, taking a route and imagining you're underwater, is probably about as far away as you could get from, you know, Phil Smith turning up to the quay with a text and giving it to his actors and saying, I want you to perform this here. Instead, by the time you get to the sort of misguides, you're just applying a sort of idea and just seeing how, by moving differently through a space, you might gain a new perspective or a new understanding of it. What happens if you decide to imagine the world as going really fast and you move really slow? What do you observe when you do these sorts of things? As theatre makers, you know, this is like the misguides to anywhere are a general practice to help anyone sort of perceive things a little bit differently. But as theatre makers, we can actually employ the misguides to anywhere as tools to help us understand how a certain place or space is working. You know, if you're trying to figure out, or you're trying to approach a site, misguides would be a very good way of conducting your field work, your research, before you actually think about what you're going to do there. Do some misguides, employ some misguidance in order to gain alternative perspectives of what that location is, but also to help you realise what goes on there in a general sense. If you were to go into your local library and pretend that all the people in the library were zombies, it doesn't just give you a heightened sense of that environment when you go in, and a heightened playfulness and a heightened appreciation of being there, because you yourself are making fun of just something that is just out of the ordinary and everyday. But by doing that, by separating yourself imaginatively from that very standard way of working, you actually get a much better sense of what that standard way of working is, if you know what I mean. It allows you to separate yourself from the standard, which is both an imaginative technique for yourself to make you enjoy it more, but also a really good tool to help you observe better what these intricacies and specificities of the site are. If you employ this, you can employ this. I mean, it's not just applicable to a library, but you can employ it to every single any space you want, really, and generate rules or lists of details that you found when you were employing these techniques. I think that it's a really good way of getting to know a site. So that's why I think Wrights and Sites are a good shout to look at. So I hope that's helpful.